Boo! I've got my crabby until I get my coffee cup. But I'm not going to lie to you. I'm still crabby this morning. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not crabby. But I am a little bit amped. So I thought I would make a follow-up video to yesterday's SP video about desperation and when desperation actually can work in your favor, which seems almost paradoxical when you think about it in regards to these law of attraction principles and ideas, or law of assumption ideas. Again, I don't think there's any difference between the law of attraction and the law of assumption whatsoever. It's just different terms of the same thing. But when you're projecting desperation, you tend to get more desperation in your life, you know? What we were talking about yesterday is that sometimes, not always, you get to this breaking point where you're so emotionally overwhelmed that you basically break down. You know, it doesn't have to seem dramatic to people outside of you, but for you yourself, you feel so overwhelmed that you literally feel like you break, and emotions kind of flood out that you were, you know, you could say repressing or holding back, and you basically give up at that moment, you know? And then from there, there's like a shift because of that. It's like a release, a letting go, as people say. And if the shift is dramatic enough, if it's aligned, it changes how you feel enough that you are sometimes able then to self-suggest positively that what you want is actually going to happen. So, in other words, like if you were trying to meet a romantic partner, to give the SP example, because that's what people just love, but it goes for, you know, most things you're trying to get or whatever, and it seems impossible, you're at your wit's end, it's not working, you just say, I give up, I'm done, and all, you know, all these emotions come flooding out, you're sobbing or whatever it is. Soon thereafter, you know, and there were a couple of good comments. I was looking at the comments for the video yesterday. You know, they're saying, yeah, soon thereafter, like the next day or a couple hours later or soon thereafter, there's all of a sudden this clarity about what to do, or a certainty that's extremely positive self-suggestion, and leads you to what you want, which could be, you know, a romantic partner, or it could be whatever. You know, somebody made a comment about like not having any money and like being at wit's end, you know, not having a place to live, broke down, let everything out. The next day, it's like, boom, all of a sudden, insight. I know what to do. I have that clarity, and I have that powerful self-suggestion that I know what to do, and they knew what to do. But one of the comments I thought I would just follow up on and make this video, because they're like, well, how do you process this stuff? You know, how do you like go on a rant when you feel desperate? And that's a good question. I don't have a good answer, in the sense that it's kind of like I made a video recently about like processing past anger and resentment. I'll link to it above. It's similar with this. I mean, there's so many things you can do. In my opinion, what it comes down to is nobody wants to really reach that point of desperation, right? Very few people want to be so desperate that they then have a breakthrough. I think most of us have been in situations like that where we don't know what to do, and we don't want to feel as bad as we feel, and we would do seemingly anything at that point not to feel it, you know? And because of that, we keep ourselves suffering because we don't want to feel this way. And eventually something happens where we have to give up, or it's too much, and we let it out. And when we let it out, that's when the magic happens. You know, Neville says, he's got that metaphor about like the moth being so consumed by the fire, the flame, that it, you know, burns itself in the fire. I think that's in The Power of Awareness. It's very dramatic when we talk about all this stuff. I mean, that's why we're talking about it in regards to SP stuff, because this seems to be so dramatic. And Neville's a very dramatic articulator of these ideas and principles. So, you know, it all kind of relates. But an issue, right? I don't think it's about going on a rant or anything. I mean, if you know my stuff, you know I love talking out loud. Like if I'm really upset and I don't know what to do, one of my go-tos, without question, I've talked about this a lot. You can find videos, you can read The Joy of Not Thinking where I talk about it. One of my go-tos is to take a walk or to be in a car, like this car, by myself and fucking let it out. Like just scream, pound the steering wheel, swear, just start like getting really, really loud, talking out loud in a way that is so expressive that it cannot almost help but create a shift within me. Now, I've been at this stuff long enough to know that I don't have to be in these desperate situations to do that. I can talk out loud to myself if I'm feeling stressed, just a little stressed, and have the same shift occur, you know? In my opinion, it might sound strange to some of you, but it's gradients of the same thing. And feeling a little bit overwhelmed, in a way, is not that different than feeling very, very, very overwhelmed. It just feels different while we're in it. But it's the same idea. And this ties back in, some of you know where I'm going with this. A lot of you might not. But this ties back into, the letting go process that, David Hawkins is famous for talking about in his book, Letting Go, as well as Claire Weeks. I think Claire Weeks talks about it even better than David Hawkins in many ways. And like Claire Weeks says, like agoraphobia, like being scared of leaving the house, being terrified to do anything. She's like, that's just an extreme example of the same anxiety and fear that you feel when you feel just a little bit fearsome before you want to do something. And so these incredibly desperate situations are actually, we can use the same tools that we would use when we just feel a little bit desperate, a little bit overwhelmed. And letting go, letting the feelings be there and not judging them it can be very, very helpful. Because the thing, as I said at the beginning of this video, the thing about desperation is like we feel so desperate and nobody wants to feel that way and they're scared of how they feel and it makes it worse and worse and worse. It's the law of reversed effort. And you're so desperate, I don't know what to do. But if you just allow those crazy thoughts to be there and focus on the feeling behind that desperation, focus on that feeling. And it's that feeling, it's like, oh, I can't handle this feeling. And you just breathe, a teacher I like, who like, she's always says, put your hand over your heart or something like that. Anything of, just something to get more in your body. Like, I can't handle the feeling. You're handling the feeling right now. It's just a feeling. All these crazy thoughts are going and you surrender to that passing feeling, that passing discomfort. And when you feel very overwhelmed, there's a lot of discomfort. But what's wild is you can feel into it, like David Hawkins and Claire Weeks talk about, and just a feeling. You can start to float through it. And what's going to gradually happen is that feeling of tightness, of overwhelmness is going to start to dissipate. So that's one approach. But again, there's a lot of different approaches. That's one approach. Screaming very loudly, jumping up and down like a monkey is another approach. There's therapeutic approaches like IFS. There's so many different approaches when we feel overwhelmed. It's doing it. This is the work, in my opinion. This is the law of attraction in practice. It's doing this inner work. This is what I like sharing with people. This is like what I like doing when I coach and counsel people. Having a coach or counselor like myself, or, a trained counselor or therapist who knows about this stuff is very helpful in having you process this discomfort. Because processing discomfort, facing fear and going through the process of it, where you face the fear and you go through it and you get to the other side. I mean, that's kind of how our life gets better on a pragmatic level. And that's why, like after years of being like, oh, I would probably never go to therapy or whatever. That's why now I've like gone to a hypnotherapist who also just does regular therapy with me for the last couple of years. And I love it. That's why like I have another coach where I just do processing with her about, like, money and business and all these self-limiting beliefs we have, the more we're able to process this stuff, the easier it is for us to feel better a lot of the time, you know? And we can do it ourselves. That's what my books, and the advice I share on this channel is trying to tell you too. It's just process it and know that nothing is wrong with you by processing it, that this is actually how this stuff works. This is actually how you manifest a better life. This is how you can manifest an SP. Not a specific fucking person, but just like a romantic partner or whatever, is processing this discomfort, this overwhelm, and coming out the other side. And I hope you don't have to get to that totally dramatic level where it's like, oh my God, I'm going to die before that happens. I hope you can teach yourself and facilitate and have people help you so that you just can process this overwhelm and these feelings of discouragement every day and realize it's not that big a deal and that there's nothing wrong with you. And that really all is well when we just get present. And if there's feelings of real overwhelm and discomfort, they're just feelings and you're okay anyway.